Thousands in the great square of St. Peter's wait for the signal. And there it is, the puff of smoke in the far corner, above the tall pipe-like chimney of the Sistine Chapel, to proclaim that a new pope has been elected. Then all eyes turn to the great balcony of St. Peter's, where the first cardinal deacon announces in Latin that Cardinal Eugenio Pacelli has chosen the name of Pius.
Ante Romane Ecclesiae Cardinalem Pacelli. Tibi nomen imposuit Deum.
And as dusk turns into darkness, the tall, slim figure of Pius XII on his 63rd birthday. Since he was first ordained 49 years ago, Eugenio Pacelli was trained as a statesman and diplomat of the Church. As Papal Secretary of State, he has carried out great missions abroad, as when he visits France for the celebration of the Holy Year. During the Great War, as nuncio in Germany, he was often a go-between among warring nations. Twice he has crossed the Atlantic and has met President Roosevelt. His election as Pope with unprecedented speed. Potentially the most dangerous of the recent series of explosions involves the bridge over London's North Circular Road, which carries the Grand Union Canal. Actually, the damage is slight, but had the bridge been destroyed, the water would have surged down on the crowded suburbs of North London. Even if the lock gates could have been shut immediately, 5 miles of canal would have been emptied, involving more than 50 million gallons of water, with a weight of nearly 250,000 tons. Just think of the damage that would have caused, and be thankful that this latest piece of insanity has failed. Hutton and Gibb come out for England on the Wanderers' ground at Johannesburg, and Hutton, in his usual brilliant form, sets England on her way with an innings of 92. Gibb is unlucky to be caught by Mitchell when he has made only 9. And later in the same innings, Wally Hammond is caught by Newson for 1. Here it comes. Then the rain takes a hand. It comes down in buckets and completely washes out play for one whole day. In their first innings, the Springboks declare at 3:49 for 8, and on the last day it's touch and go as to whether they win. But Hammond saves the day with a fine, steady innings, and the match ends in a draw. Before the start, only 8 teams left, and to see Huddersfield and Blackburn, every ground record at Huddersfield is broken by more than 56,000 fans. Weddell kicks off for the Rovers against Huddersfield playing in stripes, but he need hardly have bothered, for within a few minutes of the start, the gigantic crowd overflows onto the ground, and the game has to be stopped. But that little rest seems to give the Rovers the strength of giants, and most of the first half sees the Blackburn boys driving the attack deep into the enemy's side. After 28 scoreless minutes, the Huddersfield forward line pulls it off, and Price puts Huddersfield 1 up. And that's how it stays at half-time. Through the second half, the Rovers are fighting back like Indians on the warpath. The scramble is so fast and furious that Baird of Huddersfield has to be carried off on a stretcher. And 10 minutes from the end, from a mix-up in front of the Huddersfield goal, Weddell of the Rovers makes it 1-1. So now they'll have to start that battle all over again. Blue-blooded little horses come into the ring at Islington for the National Pony Show. And there are no more interested spectators than the royal princesses, Margaret and Elizabeth, watching points from the royal box. Some of the best stock in the country is on parade. While armed with program and pencil, the princesses make notes of their fancies. Another royal visitor is the Duke of Gloucester, who chats with some of the competitors before distributing the prizes. A grand turnout of riders as well as animals. In France's great Mediterranean port, the liner Providence has been transformed into a hospital ship for the care of Spanish refugees. Already every land hospital is jammed with these tragic victims of war. Now many more of the wounded will at last receive medical attention. Many people believe that the war in Spain is over. Even if that be true, the terrible after effects remain. Many of these men will bear the marks of their struggle for years. Some may never be whole again. The boom of the guns dies away, but the tragedy of war remains. ambassador of peace and goodwill from Britain lands in America. A fast, streamlined ambassador that runs on rails. It's the Coronation Scot, one of Britain's most famous trains, being hoisted off the SS Belle Pamela after crossing the Atlantic en route for the New York World Fair. But before going on show for the world of tomorrow, the Coronation Scot is to make a tour of the American continent, just to show them what we can do. Germany lifts the curtain at last, and we are able to show you the first pictures ever to reach this country of the German Air Force in training. For months past, the world has been discussing the great question mark of Germany's air might. Now at last we are able to show you. We are able to prove in these pictures that for training, Germany uses normal-looking, slow-moving biplanes, flying in the standard 9-plane attacking formation. A new marvel of science is on show at the San Francisco Fair. A 9-pound aluminium pan floating on an invisible cradle of electric waves. Go home and tell your wife you've seen it, and see if she believes you were sober. Or go home and tell her you found a new way to cook the breakfast eggs and bacon, in a pan without any contact with heat or flame. She'll be certain you weren't sober. Underneath the pan are coils which send up invisible electric waves of energy, and that energy produces eddy currents in the metal of the pan, and those eddy currents cause enough heat in the metal to cook the breakfast. Or you can use the eddy currents to light electric bulbs. So go home and tell your wife you found a new way to light the house, with bulbs that glow without any wires to connect them to the mains. She'll know you weren't sober. As Japan's new government takes control, determined to carry on the Chinese war to the end, a new army is being trained to cross the sea and continue the fight. And today the Emperor himself, the almighty Son of Heaven as they call him, reviews his troops.
President Roosevelt calls Treasure Island America's newest island possession. Using a key worth $35,000, Governor Olson unlocks the symbolic Golden Gate, and the Pan-Pacific Exposition makes its formal bow to the world. This 400-acre man-made island is a magic city of spacious courts and promenades, the statue of Pacifica striking the keynote. Here the West and the East blend in beauty and gaiety. The Midway, called appropriately the Gayway, goes in for streamlined amusements, stratosphere rides, pink lemonade, and ice cream cones, all the trimmings of the fairs that have become traditionally American. Across the continent from the majestic Tower of the Sun, President Roosevelt broadcasts to the 100,000 fairgoers, emphasizing the good neighbor policy.
Many times, in the elaboration of what I call the good neighbor policy, I have stressed the point that the maintenance of peace in the Western Hemisphere must be the first concern of all Americans. For nothing is more true than that we here in the New World carry the hopes of millions of human beings in other, less fortunate lands. By setting an example of international solidarity, cooperation, mutual trust, and joint helpfulness, we may keep faith alive in the heart of anxious and troubled humanity, and at the same time lift democracy high above the ugly truculence of autocracy.
At Key West, the President boards a launch headed for the battlecruiser Houston. He will observe the fleet maneuvers in the Caribbean, the largest ever held by America's Navy.
The spirit of carnival holds sway over New Orleans, and thousands jam the sidewalks and overflow into the streets as the Mardi Gras rolls along in full swing. Hermes, god of commerce and travel, rules over the festival, a gay host to the crowds that line his triumphal path of pageantry. He leads the procession of glittering floats that depict the march of the years. Of ancient French origin, the Mardi Gras was introduced into New Orleans with the first settlers in the 18th century. Streamlined for this modern age, the carnival is one of the few ancient festivals to survive in this country. Hermes meets his queen, who is to rule over the revelry at the ball given by the crew of Hermes. She receives the tribute of her merry subjects, then it's on with the gaiety and the dancing. Another glittering pageant of the Mardi Gras takes its place in the history of fun and mirth.